Welcome to Say When. I'm your host, Holly Toscanini. This podcast is for any woman who's had enough of restrictive diets, feeling bad about their bodies, or putting their lives on hold until they lose the weight. If you've had enough of diet culture, then it's time to say when. Hello and welcome to another episode of Say When, where we dive deep into the world of intuitive eating, body acceptance, and breaking free from diet culture. I'm your host, Holly Toscanini, and today I'm thrilled to introduce my special guest, Kate Williams-Stone. Kate is a visionary in the world of health and wellness, redefining what it means to live a healthy life, especially for women in the transformative stage of perimenopause. As a non-diet health and life coach, Kate's mission is to help women build confidence in their relationship with food and their bodies, guiding them to feel amazing without falling prey to the restrictive narratives of diet culture. Her unique approach is grounded in the principles of intuitive eating, blended with hormone-honoring health habits, honoring a powerful support system for women navigating the complexities of perimenopause. Now, Kate's signature framework is a rich tapestry of peaceful eating practices, cyclical living, and normalizing body changes through feminist, non-diet mindset coaching. Her expertise is backed by a robust array of certifications. She is a trained professional in intuitive eating, body image, and weight-neutral health coaching through a non-diet certification program with Stephanie Dodier, focusing on the going beyond the food method. Additionally, she brings a depth of understanding from her certification in cognitive behavioral coaching, which is enhanced by a trauma-informed and feminist perspective. Her foundational training as a certified health and life coach was completed at the Health Coach Institute and further enriched by additional intuitive eating training with Evelyn Tribole, the co-creator of the Intuitive Eating Framework. And I also want to note that Kate brings a unique perspective from her background in drama, having graduated from the prestigious program at Carnegie Mellon University. Now, in today's episode, we'll learn about Kate's inspiring journey, her revolutionary approach to wellness and midlife, and how she empowers women to embrace their health in a way that is aligned with their true selves. Kate, welcome, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Holly. It's so great to be here.
Now, you mentioned that perimenopause hit you like a, quote, ton of bricks. Can you share more about your personal experience with that and your unique approach to health coaching?
Absolutely. So, like 70% of women, I had uterine fibroids. And I also was extremely iron deficient, which they now say about a third of women have low iron. So I call those out as really common experiences that are not talked about. And so what happened was I was having extreme heavy bleeding. And this was during COVID when we were locked down. And that's how I became so anemic and low iron. And when I finally got to my primary care physician, complaining of fatigue and extremely dry skin and my hair falling out and just not feeling myself, right? And saying like, could this be perimenopause? And I got the answers that so many women get, which are, no, you're too young. And, we're in a pandemic. So you're tired.
Go home and sleep.
Yeah. And, oh, by the way, do you know that you gained 10 pounds during this lockdown? And I was sent home. So there's an example of how weight stigma gets in the way of healthcare, even for someone in a thin body.
Yeah.
Right. My symptoms were ignored, but the weight gain was what was focused on. And I was sent home. And afterwards, the primary care doctor did put in her notes, maybe you have low iron. When you go see the gynecologist, you should get your blood taken to see what your iron levels are. Well, my bleeding was so heavy that I then canceled 3 appointments with the gynecologist because I could not leave the house.
Oh my gosh.
Like I couldn't, or I'd be like, well, I'm bleeding, so I can't have, a pelvic exam.
Right.
I'll put it off for next month. And so 3 months went by. I finally got to the gynecologist. They took my blood. It confirmed everything that we had thought, that my iron was so low. My ferritin was 3. Normal is above 30. I mean,
oh my God.
And anemic. Yeah. And then we recognized the fibroids, which was the cause of the heavy bleeding. So just navigating the healthcare system
Mm-hmm.
in all of that, trying to advocate for myself while feeling just like hell. And when you have low iron, and this can also happen in perimenopause, my cognitive function was just gone.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I
It,
mean,
it, it kind of reminds me of a story of when I was going through a similar situation. I went to see my doctor, who was a woman, and I was a little young, in her opinion, to even be thinking about perimenopause. And she sort of patted me on my head and she says, "Okay, do you know menopause is when you haven't had a period for a year?" And I said, "Yeah, that's not what I asked you." I said, "I think I'm starting to go through." And the answer was always the same: it's either antidepressants or I could put you on progesterone only. It's like they would give you birth control, but they wouldn't give you any other testing. They wouldn't even test your hormone levels where I went. So, yeah. And it doesn't seem to matter, even if it was only 10 pounds, that's got to be the reason, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So
And so
crazy.
what I've learned since then is part of this medical dismissal that happens so frequently for women is actually that menopause is a medical diagnosis, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
identify it as a year with no period.
Right.
But perimenopause is not a disease state. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
So from a medical standpoint, unless they're specializing in menopause and doing hormone replacement therapy, they lack the training, they lack
Mm-hmm.
the knowledge when you're going to a general practitioner. And so the dismissal is not that we as women are wrong for bringing it up. It's
Right.
that the medical system is broken in so many ways. Doctors lack current information and training.
Mm-hmm.
Even OBGYNs, I've heard in their medical training, maybe spend a couple hours on perimenopause and menopause because a lot
Yeah.
of the OBGYN training is mainly focused in like fertility and having
Right.
babies and all of that stuff. And so we have this thing going on where women are dismissed, but they don't feel like themselves. They feel out of body.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things that you can do, but a doctor may not be the first line of support. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely encourage women to find a menopause trained specialist on your medical team. But when you're first in early perimenopause, it can just be like more of an emotional or spiritual, like feeling like, gosh, I just don't feel like myself anymore. Like
Exactly.
my body's changing and I'm like feeling that. And women just think, oh, the first person I should go to is a doctor, which I don't think
Right.
is wrong, but it's creating this phenomenon where women feel dismissed and unheard, and then they don't continue to advocate for themselves and seek greater support. And so that's why I'm like, being a health and life coach focused on perimenopause can really help women navigate this time of life.
Absolutely. You feel a little crazy in the first place, and then you go to the doctor and they just say, "Yep, you're crazy," and send you home with, whatever nonsense advice they give you. So you just kind of end up home going, "All right, I guess I'm crazy." And then you kind of go down a rabbit hole because you start Googling things. Nobody really talks about it. There's not more now, but in the past, there just wasn't a lot of information that felt hard science, right? It was like, well, this could
Yeah.
be this, something else could be happening. And then you just feel nuts. And I think the dangerous thing is that so many women will then do a lot of herbs or, other protocols that maybe aren't for them. I'm certainly not anti herbs by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like you need a professional to help guide you through knowing what's for you and what's not. Now, I know in your coaching, you emphasize moving away from diet culture. How do you help women transition from this sort of perimenopausal state with intuitive eating? How is that helpful?
Yeah. So if you're in your 40s right now, 40s and
Hmm.
50s, you lived through diet culture of the 90s, right?
Hmm.
Heroin chic, the
Oh,
thin
yeah.
ideal. Um, you know, we talked about celebrities being fat and the tabloids all the time,
Yes.
right? Like, and that was our teenage years.
Hmm.
Like, and so now coming into perimenopause, when it is normal for your body to change, that is
Mm.
part of it. Diet culture is taking advantage of that. There is so much messaging out there focused on perimenopausal women and their changing bodies that,
Hmm.
bust the muffin top, banish the meno belly,
Yeah.
all this messaging saying like your body is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You need to fix your body. And the way to do it, diet culture answer, is an extreme diet, which
Right.
actually can wreak havoc on your hormones in even more ways. It's like the worst thing you can do for hormone health in perimenopause.
Absolutely.
And so I want to normalize finding a solution in diet culture can make a lot of
Mm-hmm.
sense when that has been a place of like known safety in, previous
Sure.
years of your life. But I also think perimenopause, I see it as kind of like this storm that like shakes things up
Mm-hmm.
for women. Like, you get really clear on what your priorities are and who you want to be in this next
Yes.
chapter.
Yes.
There's a reckoning. And so
Mm-hmm.
I just saw in women, gosh, like it's a time where women, if they're open to it, can see this as a portal or like
Mm-hmm.
a time to transform their relationship with food and body. And so
Absolutely.
that's where it's almost like they're hitting a bottom,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it
Mm-hmm.
feels so intolerable. Like, God, I gotta do, my body is changing. I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel good about it. Maybe this is the time I'm finally going to make peace with my body and with
Right.
my relationship with food. And so that's
Exactly.
where the intuitive eating principles come in.
That's so important because even in media, I mean, if you look on an Instagram page or even in the news, all of the things that you see about women, especially women over 40, all talk about, how they're rocking a bikini or their legs look super toned or their abs are so tight. It's like, it's okay to get old, but you can't look old. It's okay to be old, but you can't have wrinkles. You can't have body fat. And you have to perpetually look like you're 25 or 30. And then it's okay if you age. You just can't look like you're getting older, which is so ridiculous. And it creates yet another um, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like another problem for us in terms of trying to be who we are and be okay with who we are and really step into our power as women in this time of our life when everyone around us is saying that our bodies are wrong because our bodies are not the same as they used to be.
Yeah. And I had to really do my own internal work on that thought for myself
Mm,
because as like a weight neutral coach,
mm-hmm,
I did believe that all bodies are good bodies.
mm-hmm.
Like, and I embraced like the range of bodies that exist out there. And I could accept anybody's body shape and size. But I had my own internal ageism and fat phobia that I had to
Sure.
work through. So my thought was, well, it's fine for other people to gain weight or other
Mm-hmm.
people's bodies to change, but I just don't want my body to change. And I
I'm
would
so glad you said that. Yeah, because that it's like a dirty little secret in the non-diet world is that, we can be accepting of everyone else, but in the dark at home when I'm looking at myself in the mirror, can I be that accepting of my own body and the changes I'm going through? That's powerful.
and I would compare my body, like my 46-year-old body. I'd be like, well, it looks different than it did at 25. Like, I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Of
why
course
why
not.
is it changing? Like, I didn't think my body was going to change. I thought
Right.
everybody else's bodies were going to change. So I really I had to do my own coaching work around my own relationship with my body and
Yeah.
its changes and its aging and being fully accepting of that. It was a lot to process. And
Yeah.
so that's the work that I do with my clients now is processing that those deep secret internal thoughts about our own bodies.
Yeah, it's hard and it makes you feel very vulnerable, but it's a powerful thing to do once you kind of get in it and start making those changes. Absolutely. You talk about the concept of cyclical living. Can you talk a little bit more about that concept and how cyclical living can help support women through this time?
Yeah. I wish someone had taught me about cyclical living 20 years ago. I really do. And I use the word cyclical living versus cycle syncing, which is really
Mm,
becoming popular right now in wellness
hmm.
culture.
Hmm.
And the difference I see in cyclical living versus cycle syncing, to me, the perception of cycle syncing is like another set of rules of like how I'm supposed to exercise and what I'm supposed to eat based on the
Yeah.
4 phases of the menstrual cycle.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I'm talking about. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's for most women, we have enough food rules. I don't need another set of food rules to
Exactly.
follow based on what day of my cycle I'm
Oh
on.
God.
Like, should I eat broccoli or Brussels sprouts today? I don't know which one's right. Like, I don't need that extra stress in my life.
Right.
But cyclical living is about understanding the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, before I learned this, I thought you were like either bleeding or not bleeding.
Right.
Like
2
I didn't.
cycles.
Yeah. And there's actually 4 phases of
Mm-hmm.
the menstrual cycle. And you can look at it like your 4 seasons of the year. You know, your ovulation is your summer season, and your menstrual cycle, the bleed, is like a winter season.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just think about those energies, right, you have a very different energy in the summer than you do in the
Sure.
winter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that energy is kind of duplicated in our bodies. You
Mm-hmm.
also see it in the 4 phases of the moon, which I think is
Absolutely.
really powerful. So then when you realize like, wow, so in this feminine body, I have like the 4 seasons of the earth,
Mm-hmm.
I have the 4 phases of the moon. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is really powerful, this 28-day cycle.
Right.
And so, you know, our brains also change, like how they
Mm.
function
Mm-hmm.
throughout those 28 days. We are better at knocking off to-do lists
Right.
during our luteal cycle, and we're
Sure.
creative and brainstorming during our follicular phase. So
Mm-hmm.
using all of that to like tap into that feminine power and be
Right.
most efficient, most productive, the most like in tune,
Mm-hmm.
can be really powerful. I would say the biggest thing personally I have learned from cyclical living is being able to honor rest. Like,
Mm.
it's okay when I feel tired, when I'm bleeding,
Right.
to just say, oh, I'm going to just shut some things down,
Mm-hmm.
take a break, and trust that in 3 days, I'll feel like myself again.
Right. It's going to get better. It's really fascinating to think about our bodies being in sync with the earth, and the energies of the seasons really being influential in our ability to get more done, or our ability to give ourselves permission to rest. And that seems to go against every sort of masculine patriarchal concept of strict rules, strict schedules. You have to get everything done. You've got to give it 110% every day. How do you see that sort of feminist non-diet mindset being manifested in the coaching that you do? How do you coach women to give themselves permission to be more in their feminine bodies and in their feminine power during this time?
Yeah. So our world is based on the male hormonal cycle, which is a 24-hour cycle.
Mm.
That's the expectation, that you should get up every morning and do the same thing for the
Mm-hmm.
next 12 hours, right? Go to work, do the thing, come home, rest, wake up, do it all over again on
Right.
repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And women's bodies, our hormonal cycle is a 28-day cycle. So first of all, if you just have ever felt like you don't fit in this world,
Now
in
you
a
know
female
why.
body, you don't, because it
Right.
wasn't built for your body.
Right. Right.
Right. So that's like the expectation of productivity from a male's point of view to females. And then first, I think just understanding how our bodies work,
Mm-hmm.
because part of it is just knowledge is power. And we weren't
Yes.
taught this,
Mm-hmm.
how our body is operating differently, and understanding that our hormones are never balanced because they're
Right.
changing every day.
Right.
So chasing hormone balance makes no
Mm-hmm.
sense. That's another wellness craze out there
Oh,
of
yeah.
like keep driving for perfectionistic, achievement of
Mm-hmm.
hormone balance.
Right.
And so first knowing how your body operates, and then slowly giving yourself permission to be in those phases, right? Like
Mm.
setting boundaries of rest, or trusting your body and it's like creative thinking will come back later in a cycle, right? Like
Sure.
I actually had that just yesterday. Like I had on my calendar to do a lot of writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just not feeling it. I was like, I am like not feeling in the flow at all.
Right.
And instead of pushing through and fighting it, which I
Hmm.
think I would have done in the past
Oh, yeah.
years ago, instead I was like, I wonder if I just went and walked around the block for 20 minutes. Would it change how my brain is functioning right now? Would it help me get more embodied? And just giving like trusting myself
Hmm.
that the ideas would come to me
Sure.
if I didn't just sit in front of the screen trying to like get them to
To,
come out.
yeah, to
Like,
force it. Yeah.
yeah. And so I think the feminist perspective comes in and like that body trust,
Mm-hmm.
trusting myself that like the ideas will come.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really encouraging my clients that they can learn to do the same. But we haven't
Right.
been taught that.
No, not at all. And it's so funny that we call it imbalanced hormones because they're really not imbalanced. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're just not the same as they were through our reproductive years, right? So it's
Yeah.
not that they are no longer balanced. It's just that they are naturally rebalancing. They're changing to something completely different. So the way we even talk about ourselves and our bodies during this period is it's so patriarchal. And I hate to keep saying that word, but it's true. We were raised in a society that, like you said, you would do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, most of the time, 30 days a month, and that you have to stick to that schedule. And that no matter what you're feeling, you've got to push through it, right? You've got to force yourself to do it. You've got to push through it. And giving ourselves permission just to step back and realize that whatever we're doing is not working, it's so powerful because you don't have to feel guilty or ashamed that you didn't sit there and force yourself to write what might have been nonsense, right? And not even that good, but just taking a break, giving your mind a chance to relax a little bit. And you come back and maybe you write, maybe you don't, but there is no guilt. There's no shame. You don't feel bad about yourself because you didn't finish it. The to-do lists are kind of out of control anyway. And so, honoring that our hormones are not out of balance, but that they are just kind of changing, those concepts can make you feel a little less crazy too. And you
Yeah.
talk about, using hormone honoring health habits in your coaching. Would you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, yeah. So there are ways to support your hormones. I do think this hormone balance is a total myth that
Hmm.
sets us up to just kind of feel like we need to be fixed
Yeah.
again, right? That
Yeah,
something's
exactly.
wrong. But I do think perimenopause, because your hormones are changing, I mean, it is like a hormonal roller coaster that you're on.
Hmm.
It's just that there's nothing wrong that you're on that roller coaster. That is
Sure.
this natural stage of life. Like you are
Right.
supposed to be going through it. But I'm not saying that it doesn't feel uncomfortable and kind of terrifying in
Right.
moments.
Right.
So if you think of this roller coaster, there are ways through hormone supporting or hormone honoring habits
Hmm.
to make the roller coaster a little less extreme.
Okay.
And none of these hormone honoring habits are like crazy things that you're like, oh my gosh, no. Things like making sure you're getting enough sleep, like
Hmm.
really prioritizing your sleep, slowing down during your day to just be more present in your
Hmm.
body and more connected, making sure that you get outside every day so that you
Hmm.
breathe fresh air and you get some sunlight on your face, right? That can
Hmm.
really support your hormones. There is nutritionally some things that we can add to your plate, like
Hmm.
really focusing on protein can
Hmm.
help with blood sugar balance, which then also, like if you are on a blood sugar roller coaster
Hmm.
and your perimenopausal hormonal roller coaster,
Sure.
you can feel really, really out of your mind, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
making sure your blood sugar is more stable can be
Hmm.
really, really helpful physically and mentally.
Right.
Um, Adding more fiber to your plate so that you're
Hmm.
more satiated. And also you support your digestion, right? So
Right. Oh,
these are
yeah.
just some of the hormone supporting habits I help my clients with.
Hmm.
And a lot of times I'll share these and people are like, it's so simple. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's simple It's not always easy to implement in the day to
Right.
day. But I also want to call out like the diet culture piece of it is like none of the things I just listed cost $1 million to do.
True. Very true.
They're accessible to most people.
Hmm.
So it's
Right.
simple to implement. And I think that's part of diet culture and wellness culture is like they want it to feel really confusing and overwhelming. And you need to spend all this money to do it. And it's like, no, what if this perimenopausal hormonal roller coaster is just like shaking things up in your life,
Hmm.
asking you to prioritize yourself and your health in a whole new way?
Right. Well, the sleep piece is so critical too, because I know so many women, myself included, had horrible sleep disruption, whether it was from just, your mind would be racing or your heart would start racing, or you would have night sweats. Or, I didn't really have a lot of hot flashes during the day, but night sweats were awful for me. And I
Mm.
just remember feeling exhausted all the time because you just couldn't get the sleep, something that is as basic as a good night's sleep. Boy, if that's a problem, it will disrupt everything else. It makes it hard to make good food choices. It makes it hard to make good decisions for yourself and what you're going to do during the day. Your cognition is poor, your temper is poor, your mood is off. I mean, all of those things are affected by just even 1 or 2 nights of poor sleep. What sort of advice or coaching do you do to help people who are suffering from some of the sleep disruption?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing, just making sure, all those sleep hygiene practices are in place, right?
Hmm.
So, making sure you have on your schedule a solid 8 hours to actually sleep
Hmm.
is the first thing. A colder room can be really helpful, or
Oh,
dressing in
yeah.
layers, right?
Hmm.
Like, um, there's even now like cool sheets and cool blankets that are available.
Oh,
There's a
yeah.
lot more stuff out there. And then limiting caffeine and red wine can also be helpful. But then there are like hormone replacement therapy and some other medications that have just come to market that can
Hmm.
help with hot flashes and some of that like temperature regulation or
Sure.
dysregulation that's going on. And
Hmm.
so that's where I can help somebody in conjunction with their medical provider. Like,
Hmm.
yes, there are, you know, drugs that could help you. And let's make sure before you try those drugs that all those sleep hygiene practices are in place.
Right.
And what is the inner dialogue when you wake up at 3 in the morning?
Hmm. That's a big one. It really is, because that can make or break the rest of your night. If you stay up because you've, got the TV on, or just ruined yourself, or do you sit there and get mad at yourself because you can't sleep and just make it worse, right?
Right? Or you're anxious, right? It's 3 in the
Yes.
morning. You're like, oh my God, I'm never going to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be ruined. I'm going to not be
Right.
able to get through the day. Like, is that the running inner dialogue? And
Hmm.
that's where cognitive behavioral coaching can be so helpful
Hmm.
to understand what that inner dialogue is. Because if it's going on at 3 in the morning, it's probably going on during the day too. And like,
Yeah.
let's uncover that
Hmm.
and then um reprogram that, like come up with new
Right.
thoughts, and so I do wake up at 3 in the morning a lot, or sometimes
Hmm.
just really early, and the 3 in the morning is really common for menopausal women.
Hmm.
And so when I open my eyes, I'm just like, okay, it's okay, you don't have to worry, be calm. like
Right.
like I try
Right.
to, I'm like, just close your eyes again, roll over. Like I try to like keep myself in like a very calm state and not get
Hmm.
like worried right away
Yes.
that I'm not going to be able to fall asleep
Right. Because
right
that just
away.
makes it harder. Yeah. It absolutely does.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah.
It's tough. It's, you want to get everything done, because so many women in midlife have, multiple things going on. Some still have children, some are, working 1 or 2 jobs, or going back to school and trying to work, and they, whether they have children or not, they may have other duties or responsibilities. In this age in particular, a lot of us have, younger people that we're caring for, and maybe older people that we're caring for. So there's a huge amount of responsibility for women in their 40s and 50s, and having all of this layered on top of it can make you feel like there is no way out, like it's hopeless, like there's no opportunity for any relief. And so knowing that doing something as simple as changing the way that you think about what's happening in the moment can affect the rest of your day or the rest of your night or morning, whenever it might be, that's really powerful because oftentimes we feel so out of control.
Yeah. And I think even just what are your thoughts about perimenopause? What are your
Mhm.
beliefs, right? There's a real stigma around even just talking about it. I think it's
Absolutely.
shifting. It's shifting a lot. A lot of celebrities are coming out and talking about their perimenopause experiences.
Mhm.
But, like my mom never talked to me about it.
Mm-mm.
Like, I think this previous generation, it was very secretive, right?
Mhm.
Like, and kind of embarrassing. So we
Yeah.
are breaking down that stigma just by having this conversation and normalizing the hormonal roller coaster, body changes, all of it. And so I do think to take a pause and look at, like, well, what are my beliefs about perimenopause? How do I think and feel about this experience that I'm going through?
Mhm.
And as like a conscious, intuitive woman, how do I want to think about this?
Right. Right. Giving
Is
yourself the power of choice. I think that's really important. Now, I know you mentioned that you trained with Evelyn Tribole, who was the co creator of the intuitive eating program. Talk a little bit about how you integrate the principles of intuitive eating with your coaching program.
Mm. Intuitive eating is the process that we can focus on
Hmm.
instead of dieting. So when we want to let go of diet culture, it can feel really overwhelming to just say, well, I'm not going to diet or I'm not going to have food rules anymore. And then the fear that's so common is like, oh my God, if I have no rules about food, I'm just going to eat donuts all day long for the rest of my life.
Right.
And it's going to be crazy, right? And that's not going to feel good either,
Right.
right? So, intuitive eating gives us a research based process to follow to heal our relationship with food. And so,
Hmm.
focusing on hunger and fullness and satisfaction, breaking down diet culture and really calling out what we were taught about diet culture
Yeah.
and food and our bodies, and really breaking that down so that we can release it and live the
Hmm.
rest of our lives without any of that diet culture
Right.
BS.
Right.
So freeing. And then honoring our health with gentle nutrition, right?
Hmm.
There is nutrition in intuitive eating.
Hmm.
Talked about, a few of the things that you can do in midlife nutritionally,
Right.
focusing on protein, but not being obsessed with it at every meal, right? Like that's where we get so black and white in our thinking, because there's a
Hmm.
lot out there about like midlife women must have this many grams of protein
Yep.
every single day or this meal. Like you don't have to be obsessed about it.
Hmm.
And it would be really good for retaining your muscle mass to make sure you get enough protein every day.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that is challenging because you're right. We grow up with all these rules, and we have been kind of brainwashed into believing that we have to count and track everything. Right? I wear a tracker. I have to have a log for my food. I've got to log my steps. I've got to track my units. I've got to track my grams of protein. And you said something really important, that there is a nutritional component to intuitive eating. It's not eat whatever you want all the time and assuming that's going to be fast food, or something that maybe is more of an indulgent or a play food. So being willing to say, yes, there is some nutritional information here that we can provide, but we don't want to get crazy with it, right? I don't want you to bring your scale out at the table at the restaurant and weigh and measure, the piece of chicken that you just ordered to make sure it's enough protein. I just want you to enjoy the chicken and maybe the ambiance and the people you're with, right? It's a shift,
Yeah.
but it's hard to let go of those rules because so many of us feel like we really need those guidelines or we're going to be out of control.
Well, because we don't trust ourselves,
Yeah.
right? We don't trust ourselves to make choices that work for our bodies.
Hmm.
And when we've been told our body is wrong or broken in some ways, and the way to
Hmm.
fix that, fix in air quotes, is through food and controlling our food.
Right.
Yeah. But also speaking to the level of stress that most women in midlife have, like, do you really have time to track everything? Like, is that really going to help in what you're managing in your life with stress right now? Like,
Exactly.
wouldn't it be nice to have this one area of your life where you're like, oh, I don't need to track that because I
Hmm.
can trust my body's wisdom and what it's telling me about
Mm-hmm.
my appetite and my hunger and my fullness and what will taste good right now. So
Yeah.
I won't have to track any of that. And that will be such a huge stress relief.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I have another question for you that you had mentioned that you had a background in drama.
Mhm.
And I know you've done a lot of acting in your sort of previous life. How do you feel that that training has influenced the way that you coach your clients? Does it come into play at all?
It comes into play every single day. So
Okay,
it's
tell me more.
so I was a professional actress for 10 years and
Hmm.
I studied it in college. I've been acting in plays since I was a young girl.
Hmm.
And it's so crazy now because I have so many former actor friends who are now therapists or coaches or teachers.
Hmm.
And I was like, how did that happen? And it makes so much sense because great actors are all about being in the moment, being
Hmm.
present,
Hmm.
and really listening. Like a good actor never does a play the same way every night. Like there's
Hmm.
always nuance to it because you have to be in the moment and reacting to what your scene partner is giving you. And
Hmm.
so when I'm coaching with clients, it's all that skill set. It's being a deep, deep listener, being present with somebody and like giving
Hmm.
them my full attention, and then trusting my instincts as a coach that I will have the right powerful question to ask them or be able to guide them with my intuition on like where they want to go. So I use it every single day.
That's fascinating because, when we're working with a coach, it often is the only time that we are speaking, and someone else's job is not to save us, fix us, solve the problem, or comfort us. The job is just to hold space and let us talk and then really hear what it is that we're saying. And then being willing to respond to that in a way that is productive. Um, it's an invaluable thing to be able to experience for yourself as a person who's been coached, just to be there and have somebody hold that space for you while you're talking and know that they're taking in everything that you're saying without trying to offer a lot of advice, without trying to interrupt you. They don't already think they know what you're going to say. They're not trying to solve your problem in advance. It's just being able to talk and have somebody listen. It's so powerful that I wish everybody could experience it at some point, because it really does make a big difference. You hear yourself better when you're in that space, don't you think?
Oh, it's been life changing for me to have a coach and be coached. And it's amazing how you have your own blind spots about your
Mm-hmm.
life, about your thoughts and beliefs and feelings. And then to have a coach point it out, they're like, can you see this? Can you see how
Yeah,
you're creating this without blame or judgment? But
sure.
just like, do you see how this has happened? And I'm like, no, I don't see that. It's amazing to have it pointed out.
Yeah.
And, you and I have similar training backgrounds in our coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think all coaches coach in the same way. There are
No.
coaches out there who are advice givers and
Mm-hmm.
to-do list coaches. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, in my original health coach training, it was more about actions and like, here's the sleep hygiene list and just
Sure.
go do this, or here are the foods to eat. And I quickly realized that that method of coaching did not
Mm-hmm.
create long lasting change. And so that's when I got additional training on the cognitive behavioral coaching method, because it gets to that root cause of human behavior, of what's going on. And that's where the long term transformation can happen.
Absolutely. I think there are a lot of health coach training programs that just give you protocols, so it's not that much different than anything else. It's, here's your list, here are your food groups, track this, write this down, another checklist. And when you're working with a coach, you might get homework, but the homework is going to be more like pay attention to the things that you're thinking, write down the thoughts that you're having, I mean, so that can be a lot more powerful than just getting a protocol that you may or may not even follow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And going back to the beginning of our conversation about women getting dismissed from medical providers,
Mm-hmm.
what perimenopausal women are looking for in reaching out to their medical provider is being heard, and
Mm-hmm.
seen and listened to, about
Mm-hmm.
feeling like I don't feel like myself anymore. My body is changing. My mood is changing. My thoughts are changing. Like,
Yeah.
what is going on? And so a coach can do that for you. They can
Yeah.
see and hear you. But unfortunately, the way our medical system is, like, they don't have the time to do that. And they
Oh,
really don't
yeah.
have that training, but they have training in other things that can support you.
Sure. Your doctor's got maybe 3 to 5 minutes to spend with you. And in that time, they need to be told what's going on, diagnose your condition, and give you a solution, right? In that few minutes. And that's almost impossible if it's something that does not have a diagnosis like perimenopause. I mean, yes, there are some common symptoms, right? That most women go through. We talked about some of the night sweats or hot flashes and sleep issues, a few things, mood changes, cognitive changes. But that's hard to see. And it's hard to diagnose in 5 minutes. So, yeah, your doctor is not going to be a good coach in that way. They're not going to be able to come in and sit with you and let you talk and really try to hear what it is that you're saying. It's another checklist.
Mm-hmm.
So, what thoughts could you share for women who are feeling maybe overwhelmed by all of the physical changes that accompany perimenopause? Because there's a lot. Weight gain,
Yeah.
we've talked about, I think weight gain might be the one that you hear about in the media the most because diet culture has a solution. But what other things are going on that maybe, you can help women with?
Yeah. I mean, increased stress, hot flashes, sleep disturbances. Um, you know, stress is a big one. It's funny because in this hormone balance chasing,
Mm-hmm.
cortisol, your stress hormone, like that's one that you can manage,
Mm-hmm.
by not by eliminating your stress in your life, but
Sure.
how you process that stress,
Mm-hmm.
which most of us were not taught how to do. Um, and I think the main thing, as far as the long, long list of perimenopause symptoms, is to have a space to normalize them.
Mm-hmm.
Your body is not broken. This is a normal transition, but just because it's a normal and natural transition, it doesn't mean that you have to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are resources out there, and to normalize what's going on. And then also, I can help you advocate for yourself within the medical system to get resources and support that I cannot give as a non-medical provider.
Mm-hmm.
But holding that space to hear someone and listen and realize that society taught us that we were less valuable as we age and bodies changed. And I can have, I can help you create a whole new relationship with aging, with your changing body, and really allow you to step into your power and feeling at ease
Mm-hmm.
with all of it.
It sounds like your coaching program is more of a holistic approach. I mean, it's not just like here's a diet protocol to follow, you're going to feel fine, but it sounds like you really do incorporate a lot of different modalities and a lot of different strategies to help women feel like they're ready to take on the next stage in their life.
Yeah, I mean, I do believe in the four bodies of health, right? That health
Mm-hmm.
is more than just physical, it's also emotional, mental, and spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how open to spiritual practices, we can incorporate that or not. And that, to just address physical symptoms
Mm-hmm.
um, doesn't honor the complete person.
Right. Right. Yeah,
And I
that's
think a
true.
lot of the distress for women in midlife is emotional and mental based on
Mm-hmm.
what we were taught from society.
Yeah. So I know on your website you have a free guide. Can you tell us a little bit about what's in that guide?
Yeah, so it's the non-diet guide to perimenopause. So you will find no diet culture in this guide. I talk about menopause being one day. So the real definition, the true definition of menopause. I also have a list of all the symptoms of perimenopause. So you can take that checklist and check off what you are experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And then also a list of the hormone supporting habits that we talked about. I have the complete list in there also. So, how you can honor your health in perimenopause, but without the focus being on changing your body.
Mm-hmm. Great. People can find that at your website. I'll list all of this in the show notes so people will know exactly how to connect with you. And for those people that do, I know they can find you on Instagram at Kate W. Stone. What can they learn from your Instagram platform? What do you share there that we would be excited to see?
Ooh, I love sharing on Instagram. It's really fun. So you'll get like a behind the scenes of my real life in my
Mhm.
Instagram stories. And then I share about body image, stress management, health supporting habits in real life. Sometimes I'm sharing what I'm cooking for dinner with my
Mhm.
husband.
Mhm.
But yeah, I try to be really like just approachable and real and authentic in my Instagram. So definitely find me there. And it's me, like it's just me there. So like if you DM me, you are not chatting with some bot or
Right,
assistant, like you are messaging me,
right.
if you send me an email or a DM on Instagram. So I would love to connect there.
That's great. Reflecting on our conversation, it's pretty evident that your approach to health and wellness really offers refreshing and a much needed perspective, especially for women navigating all the complexities that go along with perimenopause. And your journey from facing your own challenges with perimenopause to empowering others through things like hormone honoring health, intuitive eating habits, and it's inspiring and enlightening because so many people have no idea that they can get help for these symptoms. And your dedication to dismantling diet culture and then also advocating for a more inclusive and compassionate approach to health is a beacon of hope for so many women. So thank you so much for being here today. It was helpful for me, and I know it was helpful for the audience. Um, so, personally, here are just a few things I'm taking away from our conversation. Kate's personal and professional journey really sheds light on the unique challenges women face during perimenopause and the importance of understanding and addressing these changes in a holistic way. And her non diet, intuitive approach really empowers women to reject restrictive dieting, especially during a phase of life when traditional diet methods have failed us. They've failed us for so long, but it's even worse now. And your emphasis on hormone honoring practices really offers some practical and effective strategies for women in perimenopause, helping them maintain their health, their wellness, and their mindset. More than anything else, we don't want to lose our minds. And your focus on mindful eating and adapting lifestyle habits to your body's natural cycles provides a grounded and sustainable approach to wellness. And your work that champions body positivity and acceptance really encourages women to embrace their bodies with kindness and compassion, especially during these transformative years. And we also highlighted the importance of a holistic approach to health that considers not just your physical well being, but your emotional and spiritual health as well. And your story and approach really illustrate how embracing intuitive self care practices can lead to greater empowerment and a deeper sense of well being in the long run. Do you have any final thoughts or advice you'd like to share with our audience?
I'll share a quick story.
Great.
Years ago, I was laying on the acupuncture table with my acupuncturist. This
Mm-hmm.
was probably 5 years ago now when I was dealing with heavy bleeding and all of these symptoms. And I was asking her about perimenopause, and she said, well, perimenopause can be a portal to transformation if you're open to it. But
Mm,
most women aren't open to that experience. And
yeah.
that really, like, I mean, it landed with me in a deep
Mm-hmm.
way. And it showed me, oh, I have a choice here. I can continue to subscribe to the narrative that I have been given, that I should feel shame about perimenopause and my body's broken and it's no longer as valuable or worthy as it once was when I was
Mm-hmm.
25 years old. Or I can make a choice to go a different way and step into this portal of transformation. So,
I love looking at it that way because that's so much more empowering than thinking I'm getting old and irrelevant and useless, right? It's a new chapter in our lives. It can be a definitely difficult transition for some people, but if you're open to the fact that life is going to get different, we can kind of shift our archetype from being like the princess, right? That's always sort of got to be pretty and whatever that means, to being more of the queen or the high priestess or the empress in our lives. We can really step into that next chapter and be the goddess that we are here to be without having to worry about all of the other things that go along with reproductive care. You still have to take care of yourself reproductively, of course, but you don't have to worry about a lot of the same things you did when you were in your, 20s or 30s. Life has shifted, your body has changed. And if we can embrace that change and honor it instead of only celebrating celebrities with, the toned legs and the skimpy dress that, on her 50th birthday, whatever, right? Let's embrace bodies that are real and that are beautiful and that are all shapes and sizes. Yeah. All
Absolutely.
right, everybody, you can get a copy of the free non-diet guide to perimenopause at katewilliamstone.com/guide. And you can connect with Kate on Instagram at Kate W. Stone or at katewilliamstone.com. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Say When podcast. And thank you, Kate, for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. Your work not only helps redefine health in midlife, but also encourages women to embrace this phase of life with confidence and self-love. Until next time, everybody, bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Say When, the podcast for women who've had enough of diet culture and are ready to get on with their lives. If you'd like to learn more about working with me, send me a DM through Instagram at Holly Toscanini, or you can find me on my website, hollytoscanini.com. Thanks for joining me.